King Bhumibol, the monarch of the country Thailand, is regarded as semi-divine, wise, and sagacious. This might be part of why his best-selling history book took off on the charts when he first released it in the country. But it doesn't tell the political or economic history of Thailand. It's just the story of a king and his dog. But an article from the Council on Foreign Relations, released on February 26, tells a much more sinister narrative of Thailand's history. It dates back to the early 2000s, when political tension in the country first began to rise, creating a split between two classes in the country: the yellow shirts, members of the wealthy upper and middle classes, and the red shirts, the country's rural and poor members of the state. One man, Thaksin Shinawatra, in his rise to power as prime minister, began to use rice subsidies and rural development programs as a way to engage these red shirt populations. And in return for the political and economic debt they owed him, they helped vault him to power. Because there's so many more red shirts in Thailand than yellow shirts, the yellow shirts began to feel that their own political impetus in the country was being marginalized and crushed. And in response, they used their own military coup d'etat to remove Thaksin Shinawatra from power. Thaksin replaced himself with his sister, who now has been removed by a national course over the same rice subsidies that Thaksin used in the past. The military interim government now is forced with a much more difficult question, upon which Thailand's political balance and social balance hinge. What must be done to bring red and yellow shirts together in Thailand? And the answer goes back to King Bhumibol and the monarchy, to lift the harsh lèse-majesté laws within Thailand, laws that ban any type of criticism of the monarchy. First of all, because these laws are becoming the impetus for witch hunts against the poor. Second, because they will show the monarchy's emphasis on rural Thailand. And finally, because they provide the opportunity to shed light on controversial political succession. But first of all, lifting the lèse-majesté laws will help absolve a current political tension: the fact that those laws are being used as the impetus for witch hunts against the poor and red shirt members of Thailand's population. An article published by the Washington Post on June 8th shows the story of Dr. Raimphong Nana, who is not only the wealthy head of a hospital in the northern suburbs of Thailand, a yellow shirt, but also leads a group called the Garage Collection Organization, which is a group specifically targeted at finding, essentially witch hunting, any members of the country's population who may be expressing dissatisfaction with the monarchy and turning over them to the military junta. The junta is trying them in military courts rather than civilian courts, saying that the added speed will help them preserve political stability. But a June 8th article from the New York-based Human Rights Watch organization shows that this may have graver dangers. Not only does it exacerbate tensions between red and yellow shirt members of the population, but this crackdown is also bringing academics, well-educated members of the country's society, into military courts. And that damages the country's future, because those are the experts who will come up with better government and economic structures in the future that will help Thailand absolve its problems and ultimately create a more prosperous society. But lifting the lèse-majesté laws will not only help reduce the divide between the red and yellow shirts, but it will show that the monarchy is actively working to help the red shirt population, which is a tension that Thaksin Shinawatra and other corrupt politicians long based their power on. An article published by the National Geographic Foundation on May 22nd shows one of the most important problems right now: the fact that the military and the king's government are mainly aiming at producing infrastructural and urban development projects that help the red shirt population. But because King Bhumibol is seen as semi-divine and sagacious, they simply don't want to talk about the problems that are happening. Because if they talk about the problems that they're trying to solve, and the fact that those problems, being deep-rooted economic and social problems, haven't yet been solved, it's a poor reflection on the monarchy's attempts. Even though King Bhumibol has bankrolled hundreds of projects to help the red shirt population, that is not being actively advertised as solving problems. Instead, it appears that the yellow shirt population is footing the bill for government projects pushed forward by prime ministers like Thaksin Shinawatra. The monarchy loves to help the red shirt population, but because they refuse to talk about the problems that they are trying to solve, it is not widely recognized. And what's more is that this creates the breeding ground on which Thaksin Shinawatra's political strategies festered. Because it is not clear that the monarchy is actively helping the urban and rural populations, red shirt dissatisfaction has caused them to gravitate to Shinawatra's political goals. In his 1998 book, A Siamese Tragedy, Thai expert Walton Bellow shows that this angers the yellow shirts, who feel that their tax dollars are going towards the Prime Minister's plans to empower a group of politicians and other rural members of the country that are trying to marginalize their part of the country and its economy. Instead, if the lèse-majesté laws were lifted and the government could more freely talk about the problems and approaches it was taking to help the red shirts, there would be a clear cloud for them. Even without corrupt politicians like Thaksin Shinawatra to support them, it would be clear that the monarchy was on the side of the red shirts, without taking extra money from the yellow shirts, creating a closer and more prosperous society between the two of them. But finally, one of the reasons that the lèse-majesté laws should be lifted is because in the long term, they will allow the Thai government to push forward to a better, more prosperous society, especially in terms of the final reason, that the lèse-majesté laws are creating an imbalance between the succession for the government. A Washington Post article from June 6th shows that the current government is set to be expiring soon because King Bhumibol's years alive are numbered. The person to take up the throne after him will be the Crown Prince. And the Washington Post article shows that ex-Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra has been working very, very hard to cultivate close relationships with the Crown Prince. And it seems that if the Crown Prince does succeed the king, then in return, Thaksin Shinawatra will be asked to be promoted to the presidency and become the first Thai president with more far-reaching powers than he ever had as prime minister. To stop this, an article from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace on June 7th shows that the military can step in. By lifting the lèse-majesté laws that prevent the public from talking about the secession and who will actually come to take up power after King Bhumibol, it will be more clear if Thaksin Shinawatra and red-shirt corrupt politicians are trying to institute a greater precedency. And in that action, the public of Thailand will be able to negotiate the terms of a better government that can more prosperously integrate both the red and yellow shirts. When we wonder, how can the government bring together red and yellow shirts in Thailand's population? The answer is to lift these lèse-majesté laws, so that the king may not only write about the adventures of his dog and the history of Thailand, but secure a brighter and more prosperous future for the entire country.